Hi, I'm Howard Spence. I'm Eaton County Commissioner out here in Delta Township. From time to time, as a part of my responsibilities and duties, I get out and about in the community, but I go to a lot of meetings. And I like to report on those meetings because quite often information that I receive in those meetings is something I think that my constituents and friends would be interested in knowing. And in fact, I usually post all of my postings to my Facebook account, which is Howard Spence 921. And I also tweet those same postings along with pictures or videos or whatever on my Twitter account, which is at Commissioner HTS. And I invite you to visit my Twitter account postings or follow me or ask to be a friend on Facebook. I'm a friendly person. But in any case, recently one of my friends asked me, well, all these meetings you go to, are they really worthwhile to go to? And of course they are, I guess, or at least most of them. And based on that inquiry, I thought, well, hey, let me put together a video and show some of my friends what it is like to go to some of these meetings, the topics we talk about, and why I think there may be some value in my going. And you'd be surprised at what you will hear in a meeting. I mean, almost too much to communicate. And a lot of what I hear or what I put out there myself and we interact on is something that is really probably of interest to people living right here in Delta Township and or the greater Lansing area where I like to visit and interact with friends and family. But in any case, today, October 5th, 2016, I went to a meeting at the Crown Plaza West right here in Delta of the Lansing Regional Chamber of Commerce. And the particular committee that was meeting today was the Delta Government Relations Committee. And this committee is composed of a number of business leaders in the area, both in Delta and also in the Lansing, Ingham County areas, politicians, elected officials, primarily from Eaton County and primarily from Delta Township, and some small businesses that do business out here or have their shops out here in Delta Township. And of course, we occasionally have guest speakers and so forth come in. But today was a good day for me to decide that I wanted to share with my constituents and friends some of the stuff that was going on here at the government relations meeting, because this is the last meeting before the general election, November 8th. And so we had a large number of our elected officials present, coming to get some background information on issues that they want to be discussing between now and the time of the election. And I took some pictures of those and I post those on my Facebook along with a short written narrative. But there were some topics today that were of significant interest, not only to people in Delta Township, but throughout Eaton County and the Tri-County area. And I had my smartphone with me, so as I often like to do, I was taking pictures, and so I started taking some video clips. And those video clips, I think, are things you might want to take a look at. I've appended them either to the end of this introductory video where I discuss my impressions of the meeting, or else I provide links so that you can click on those and go directly to those segments. And the ones that I'm confident I'm going to share with you, there is a presentation by State Senator Rick Jones, who's chair of the Judiciary Committee of the State Senate, about a bill which recently passed dealing with the regulation and licensing and taxation of medical marijuana. And as I believe you will see from the video clip where he's speaking, apparently that is either on the governor's desk or headed that way, and very shortly we'll have new rules about medical marijuana dispensaries, and that's a topic that's been of interest to the public as well as to government officials and other businesses throughout this whole region. Another set of video clips which I put here relate to some of the things that my friend Tom Reich, Sheriff Tom Reich, has implemented and is planning for the Delta Patrol, which is our local law enforcement or police agency here in Delta. The Delta Patrol is actually a division within the Eaton County Sheriff's Department, and Tom has been working hard to implement some changes there which will benefit our officers as well as benefit our residents and civilians who come into contact with members of the Eaton County Sheriff's Department. And some exciting new plans, and he discusses those, and he brought along a couple of his command staff to discuss those particular changes. And the theme is that we are happy to begin or continue a collaboration with the City of Lansing and Lansing Police Chief Yankowski, which allows us to collaborate, coordinate our law enforcement opportunities and needs, especially right along the county border, which is Waverly Road. Parts of the City of Lansing are actually in Eaton County, and we've made great progress in the 4 years that Tom has been here to establishing better interagency relationships with other law enforcement agencies. And this is just another example. And one thing I will mention, you can take a look at the clip, but the training that Captain Campbell talks about is very vital training, up to the minute training. The City of Lansing and Eaton County are seeking contributions and grants toward this program, which they are implementing for training. Hopefully up to 40% of our deputies will go through this 4-day training by the end of November, which is an ambitious goal, but a worthwhile goal. And they collaborate not only with each other, but with a lot of the smaller jurisdictional police agencies in the area. And they also collaborate with NAMI, the National Mental Health Initiative. I'm sorry I missed the name up, but you'll hear the people talk about it on the video clip, which is a group that is very concerned about how police interact with people who are mentally ill, agitated, suicidal. Just very difficult to anticipate what they will do and how they will work. And so hopefully this will make our police officers safer, and will also make the people they come into contact with safer. So we're hoping there. And again, like I said, this is a good move, unprecedented pretty much here in Eaton County. And Sheriff Reich is doing a good job. And along that same line, he's working with Doug Lloyd, our Eaton County prosecutor, who was also at the meeting today. And they are constituting a pretty good law enforcement team here, where they work together to help make sure that we are all kept as safe as we can be, and that there are as few accidents or tragedies or whatever. But it's a difficult job, and it's a job that does require that our staff continually get upgraded and trained. So those are at least 2 or 3 of the video clips which I'm trying to make available, because I think that they will be of interest to you. Now, who's there? I've already mentioned several people, but today we had Jeff Hicks, who's an outgoing Delta Township trustee. He's going to not seek re-election, and he's going to take care of some personal business and take some time away from politics. And he chairs this regional Delta Government Relations Committee, and he's done a good job, and we'll miss him. The government relations officer or specialist with the chamber itself, the Greater Lansing Regional Chamber of Commerce, is my friend Steve Japinga, and he coordinates these meetings and helps us to get the information we need, both as government officials and also as business people, to be aware of issues that require some oversight or intervention or input from us to help make Delta and the Greater Lansing area generally into a regional entity that is one of the best that it can be with the resources we have. So, and while I'm thinking of it, let me give a shout out to Steve Japinga. Steve is getting married Friday. So congratulations, Steve Japinga. Many happy years of love and bliss. Been there, done that. And why wasn't I invited to the bachelor party? But anyway, more seriously, we also had there a representative from the office of United States Senator Debbie Stabenow, and we had a representative from the office of United States Senator Gary Peters. I mentioned Rick Jones, Senator Jones, State Senator Jones. He was there. Sheriff Reich was there also, of course, with Lieutenant Mark Rigglesworth, who is the Delta Patrol Supervisor or Division Head. Doug Lloyd. Representing Eaton County, my colleague and fellow Commissioner Jeremy Whittam was there. Jeremy is also one of those people who's decided that he's had enough of election nonsense, and he's going to take some time off to decompress before he comes back and provides additional good service. He is chair of our Public Safety and Judiciary Committee, and I am vice chair, and of course I was there, and I always like to have my input and from my perspective about what's going on that impacts Eaton County and particularly Delta Township. Ken Fletcher, supervisor of our township, Delta Township, was there, as well as Mary Clark, who is township clerk. And Mary talked to us about the upcoming election. It's going to be a busy one, a hectic one. We're already anticipating well over 5,000 absentee ballots, and she is gearing up to hire additional staff to accommodate what could be a significant increase in turnout for this election here in Delta, where she is elections supervisor. And along the same line, Mary told us that, and again, it kind of goes to accountability in government. The state of Michigan requires that we set these elections up and conduct them, and they are promising that they will reimburse us, the township, the county, whoever, for the cost of the election, because that's their duty, their job. And from the presidential primary election several months ago, Delta Township and a number of other clerks from around the state are still waiting for a tardy reimbursement by the state of Michigan. So state of Michigan, get that money here, pay up just like we have to pay up, and you know, and it's only going to increase in the next month with the new election. Ed Reed was here from the Delta Township Economic Development Department, along with my good friend Larry Leatherwood, who is chair of our Economic Development Committee, a group of citizen representatives on that particular board. And they're working on the project at the present time of making sure that the entrance to Delta Township along West Saginaw Highway gets spruced up a bit, which will help our image, and certainly it's a good thing to attract additional future business and retail to Delta, which we strongly advocate for here. They also mentioned that they have enacted or in the process of finalizing a new weed ordinance, which will make it the responsibility of homeowners to take care of their grass, lawn, weeds when it gets to be a certain height, or the township will do it for them at a pretty significant cost. So be watching out for that. It's a part of civic responsibility to make sure that you keep your property in as good a shape as you can and comply with the various city ordinances. There's no telling what you will find when you go into those weeds. There are snakes and other vermin out there that may be waiting to bite you. So keep those weeds cut down and enjoy this election season. The director of the Delta Township Library was there. The things are going well. She's relatively new, and she's already made a lot of innovations. It's somebody that we all like. The former librarian was great, but sometimes change is good, and we're enjoying the change we're seeing. The fire department was represented. Chief Clark was not there, but he did send a representative. And just to show you our first responders, our police, our EMS service, the fire department had 450 calls approximately last month in the month of September. So they stayed busy. And we have one of the best EMS operations in the state. And so they give us monthly updates about that. Doug Lloyd talks about some of the criminal activity and prosecutions that are going on to the extent that he can. And basically, we have a good law enforcement criminal justice team. None of the judges are here, but the judges interact well with our prosecutor and our sheriff, and we're doing good things. And so we're hopeful that we'll be able to keep it that way into the future. Speaking of keeping it that way into the future, at the county level, we just finalized our annual budget. So as of October 1st, I guess we're already there, we have a new budget. We're in a new fiscal year. And at the last commission meeting in the middle of September, where we approved the budget, a topic came up. I pressed it somewhat because apparently the budget is contingent that we just closed, and the one we just approved for the coming year, contingent upon some reasonable expectation or estimate of what our revenues are going to be and our expenses are going to be. And our budget, as well as the budgets of all 80 counties across this state, and the operation of many of our courts, are kind of in limbo because the bureaucrats in the Department of Health and Human Services at their administrative level decided to modify a reimbursement agreement or interpretation of a policy that goes back years. And county governments can make estimates of what they expect their revenue to be and their cost to be based upon this memo of understanding, or it's actually a policy statement. It's not a regulation or a statute. But this is something that has a lot of people upset. Very recently, the administration in DHHS decided on a retroactive basis to change how they figured out what amount of money was going to go to the counties to take care of our juvenile justice system. We have a lot of kids that are wards of the court or otherwise under our supervision that require therapy, that require monitoring, this type of thing, and that can be very expensive, as you know. And our judges across the state, but particularly here in Eaton County, have worked hard to make sure that the kids get the services they need, but that we keep our costs down. And with this retroactive change in the way that this policy statement is to be applied, Eaton County potentially is going to have a $300,000 plug in its budget for the year that just closed, and it will be a similar or larger one in the year coming. And Eaton County is not alone. Like I said, all 80 counties across the state, Ingham County potentially has up to $1 million they're going to have to account for based upon the state's decision not to send that money, which has already been collected, but apparently it'll go for other purposes other than the intended purpose. And the problem is aggravated because DHHS has decided to delegate some of the case management oversight that it had previously done to private sector entities, which is a follow-up to one of the policies that appears to be coming out of the Snyder administration. If it moves, if it's government, privatize it. Some things should be privatized. Some things should not for government services. But one thing is for sure, no matter what you privatize or don't, you shouldn't force or mandate duties on counties that you aren't providing the funding for when it's been collected otherwise. So we're monitoring that very closely. Seriously, the other 80 counties, some of the other 80 counties, and the Michigan Association of Counties is contemplating a lawsuit because when they began to talk to the officials that oversaw this program in DHHS and said it's unfair, it's probably illegal, we may have to sue you. Well, the answer is, what every bureaucrat hears, go ahead and sue us. And that's not a good thing. So on a bipartisan basis, the Eaton County Board of Commissioners recognized that was unfair and a big problem. And I suggested that we have our controller and our chairman of the board, Blake Mulder, and also our chief judge, Judge Byerly, put together a letter to DHHS administration, once more complaining and saying they're leaving us in jeopardy and in limbo and what's up. And I further went on to suggest we make sure that there is a copy sent to Governor Schneider, letting him know that his underlings are doing things that are not good for the people of the state of Michigan, and in particular for our counties. And the board decided to follow up on my suggestion, and that letter is going to go to the governor as a copy, because we want to make sure we don't get in a situation like we did with Flint, where bureaucrats and underlings are doing things, and apparently the governor is not knowing about it. We want him to know, and we want him, if possible, to correct it and to be fair with county governments and our courts to give us the money for the services that we are mandated to provide. Reports from the 2 school districts in Delta, both of which are in my commissioner district, the Grand Ledge School District and the Waverly School District. 2 very good school districts, small but good, and they also give us reports on things that are going on at that level. So that's an overview of some of the topics we discussed today. Let me take a quick look and see if there is anything else in the notes. Oh, we all talk about events that are going on, and we share that information. For example, the Board of Water and Light is routinely involved in this Delta Government Relations Committee, and my friend Calvin Jones will come as a government relations representative for BWL, and he told us about the cooperation that they received from the Lansing City Council and government to make concessions that would allow BWL to relocate a facility they needed to relocate. And that is important to Delta Township, of course, because we get our electric power and our water from the Board of Water and Light. And the decisions and actions at BWL impact on us greatly. And in fact, about 2 years ago, when there were issues with BWL service, we were allowed in Delta, as well as in East Lansing, I think, to appoint directors to their board of directors on an advisory basis to look out for the interests of residents here in Delta Township. Events, the Board of Water and Light is having their annual chili competition this weekend. And I understand that those are very competitive events, and many excellent chili chefs. So if you get a chance, get down there and visit. It's a very worthwhile activity. It's actually a charity fundraiser. Funds from that chili cook-off competition go to fund regional types of activities and programs that we benefit from here in Delta, including organizations, institutions like the Impression 5 Museum. Larry Leatherwood brought to our attention that on October 20th at the Lansing Country Club, an organization that he helped found called Uplift Our Youth is having their annual fundraiser formal dinner at the Lansing Country Club. And I've been there a few times, and they are very nice affairs. If you check, you may still be able to get a ticket. The beautiful part of it is that proceeds from that go to help young kids in the Lansing area and elsewhere, including possibly here in Delta, get involved in programs that, actually the money often goes to the organizations that provide services to help them get involved in wholesome activities that will benefit them and their development and growth. So keep that in mind. Last week, on the weekend, we had at the Lansing Mall, which is one of my favorite places to go when I can find time, Lansing Mall Community Day. And there, Sheriff Reich and our fire department and other Delta Township agencies and departments put on, in conjunction with the Lansing Mall, a program in which kids and their families and their community could come together and learn some things about possible protection for themselves in the event of significant difficulties like active shooters and so forth. And this is something that more and more we're going to have to be doing. And I think our present law enforcement team under the direction of Tom Reich is doing a good job of making sure that we anticipate what people say is the impossible, which seems to be happening now every day. There's a new 911 emergency dispatch director here in Eaton County government. He'll be coming on board, if he isn't already, within the next week or two. And we have historically had one of the best 911 dispatch emergency systems in the state. Our former director, Miss Heinze, left to go to the private sector. So this guy is stepping into big shoes, and we want to make sure that the services provided continue to be top-level services that will keep us safe here in Eaton County. Oh, I guess that's enough for me to talk about now. I feel like maybe now you've been at the meeting, and maybe now you know why you don't like to go to meetings. So if you ever have any questions, you can contact me or any other government official, trustees at the Delta Township, whoever, because Delta is a great place to live, work, play, raise families. And I want to continue to let those looking on know that my agenda remains that I want Delta to continue to be the best in the area, and I push for diversity and inclusion, because diversity, inclusion, good community policing, these are things that will help us have happy lives and to be able to enjoy and work with our neighbors, no matter what their background, ethnically, racially, sexual orientation, whatever. Delta is a happy place, and we discuss happiness at the meetings we go to, including the Lansing Regional Chamber Delta Government Relations Committee. So hopefully this is helpful. If you want, become my friend on Facebook. If you don't want, you wouldn't have been hanging on to the very end. So take care, and we appreciate you.
Hung or community service or what, you know, it's concerning because you had a lot of racial, you know, graffiti statements made in there. And so I think as far as the prosecutor's office on how we'll handle it is we'll sit down with the victims first and talk to them as to how we may proceed with this matter. And we'll go from there. So I don't know if it'll be something that's immediately resolved, but it will be something that will involve the victims and thoughts of how we deal with these individuals. That's it.
Envy you in that, because it was a mess, and you're dealing with young lives too. So
Exactly.
Tough spot to be in.
Yeah, Doug, were those juveniles or were they adults?
The sheriff said they're 4 17-year-olds.
Okay. Oh, okay.
I had an opportunity to read the report yet.
Okay, sure.
Submitted to our office the day before yesterday, I believe. So.
Okay, but it doesn't appear there's any tie-in to what happened in Potterville with those 2 young lesbians? It's a totally separate thing at this point, or do we even comment?
I do not believe that there's any what's the word I'm looking for? I have no knowledge that the individuals in Delta Township were involved with what happened in Potterville, if that's what you're asking.
Right. Okay.
And as far as I haven't had the opportunity to read the reports as far as the statements that were made in Potterville compared to the graffiti that was done in Belton Township.
End up getting that resolved. We're also having another Citizens Police Academy in November, first part of November. This will be my third one. It's going to be very successful. These classes are filling up quickly. If you want to join us or know of anybody that wants to, we have room right now. So I'm going to turn it over to Lieutenant Rigglesworth first before I get it to the captain and give you a quick update on him before Jeff gets it.
Before the captain goes, every year we do extra patrols with the Office of Highway Safety Planning. This year, we've always done seatbelt and OWI. This year, we added distracted driving. So, because that is a huge issue. So, we're going to have teams of deputies out looking for people that are on their phones while they're driving. We hired 3 new deputies that started in Delta this week. So, we're really happy to have 3 new deputies out there. Last week, we had a Narcan saved by one of our deputies who responded to an overdose. Deputy Joe Travis, I keep saying that name because that guy does great things for us, but he got there and was able to administer Narcan before EMS got there. Community Day at Lansing Mall was last weekend. That was awesome. If you got a chance to come out to that, I'm glad you did, because we got to interact with a lot of people. Prosecutor was there. There was many different agencies from not just Eaton County, but the Tri-County area. And really quickly, we had an armed robbery at the Edinburgh gas station a couple weekends ago. About the same time, we had a clown report, which you guys have probably heard a lot about in the media. And we obviously have a finite amount of resources, so we had to put resources on this armed robbery, and we had to have also a resource go to this clown issue. After investigation, we found that it was a hoax. We had a bunch of kids go to a playground, start talking about this clown stuff that's been in the media. One kid says, I got a clown mask back in my closet. I'll go get it, come out and scare them, and act like I'm trying to kidnap them. So please talk to your youngsters and make sure that they don't get involved in this clown nonsense that we got going on, because, again, we have to take resources away from a real armed robbery to go over and deal with a hoax. So anyways, I know we've talked about mental health stuff here many times at these meetings. The greater Lansing area has worked to work better with law enforcement and mental health issues. Jeff Campbell has been working a lot on this, so I'll let him explain the response thing we're going to do.
Good morning. About a year ago, Chief Jankowski from Lansing PD organized a meeting of law enforcement from the Tri-County area and representatives from all across the criminal justice system and community mental health to see if there was support and willingness to create what we call a crisis intervention team for the Tri-County area. And that is a group of what will be specially trained police officers that can respond to any type of call involving mental illness or mental health crisis and co-occurring substance abuse with mental health crisis. It's been about a year in the making, but we finally do have a class scheduled for the end of November. It'll be our first 40-hour class for the first of the crisis intervention team that we're creating for the Tri-County area. I've been sitting on the steering committee to develop that curriculum for the last year, along with Captain Darren Southworth from Lansing PD and a bunch of representatives from CMH and criminal justice agencies. So what that will do is provide a group of officers, and our goal is to train 25% of the patrol force across the Tri-County area. That's the recommended best practice across the country. And that will provide them with a little bit more training in mental health disorders, what the symptoms are, what the side effects of their medications might be, how that interacts with illegal substances. It will give them specific de-escalation tactics to use for particular types of mental illness if we know that we're dealing with a certain particular illness. And it will hopefully reduce our need for use of force in those incidents. And it will also give our officers that are trained direct access to the community mental health system, somebody in that system that they can contact, speak with, talk to about the best way to help that person and hopefully without the need for taking them to jail if we can avoid that. So that, I think, is a good thing. It kind of started with a recommendation from 2 documents that came out here in the last year or so. And that's the President's Task Force Report on 21st Century Policing and a document called the 30 Guiding Principles of Use of Force from the Police Executive Research Forum. Both of those documents call for this kind of training. So we are working with all of the agencies in the Tri-County area to try to make this happen. We do have several different leaders in this effort. Lansing PD and Eaton County Sheriff's Office are the local law enforcement representatives. We have the National Alliance on Mental Illness. The local Lansing chapter has been heavily involved in this, and of course, community mental health. We are seeking some funding for this. We do have a pending grant application with the federal government that we're waiting to hear back on. We should hear any day on whether we get awarded that grant, but I'm pretty optimistic that we will. We're also seeking private donations to support this effort. It's going to take us about 3 years to train 160 officers across the Tri-County area. You'll see that information that I handed out. Anything that you need to know about where to donate can be found in that letter. You'll see that we were looking for donations by October 1st. I didn't get a chance to update that letter, but we changed our class at the end of November. So we're at about $7,000 so far in private donations. And again, we're going to need to do probably at least 4 classes to get our 160 officers trained. And then probably another class each year to maintain that level of officer availability. So it's being done on a mutual aid basis, so if Eaton County has a couple of crisis intervention team members working, but Lansing PD doesn't, we will send our deputies over there to help them out if there's a need for it, and vice versa. We'll send people anywhere in the Tri-County area if it's needed, and they would do the same for us. So that's kind of why we're trying for that 160 officer, 25%. We'll always have somebody working any shift 24/7 that way. So. Other than that, I'd be happy to answer any questions about it.
What's the total funds you need?
Well, the grant that we applied for would be about $160,000. Part of that would go towards reimbursing agencies for backfill overtime so that they can keep enough people on the street but still have people sent to this training. It's a big deal for a lot of agencies to send somebody off the road for a week for this training, so we're trying to make that a little bit of an incentive. If we don't get that grant, we need at least $10,000 to cover our consultant that's going to run our first class for us. And we have contracted with a person out of Kalamazoo that's been running these kinds of programs. It's designed for him to help us run the first class, and then for us local representatives to take over and run the class thereafter. So we need at least $10,000 to cover his fee alone, and then additional money for materials, break type stuff, training materials that we're going to need to put together. This also includes scenario training, so we need to pay some actors, that kind of thing. So we're a minimum of $10,000. We're probably going to be able to do this first class for about $15,000 if we don't get that grant.
Anybody that gets it is going to be inspected by a lab. Right now, if you did have somebody with cancer, they went into one of these dispensaries in Lansing, they have no idea what they're getting. It doesn't tell you how much THC is in it or how many cannabinoids, none of that. There could be bug spray, mold, there could be all kinds of contaminants and no control. This is supposed to be a prescription. So in the future, labs will have to test everything. People will know exactly what they're getting. There will be licensed growers, licensed transporters, and licensed dispensaries, and they will be inspected. There's a tax involved, and that's going to pay for all of this. The townships and cities have all the power to say we don't want any of these, or we want some, but they've got to be in the industrial section, not next to churches, not next to schools, that sort of thing. And it's just a huge problem. I know there's one in Lansing that I only have a little piece of Lansing on the west of Waverly. This is why I get calls constantly complaining, why haven't you done anything about downtown Lansing? One right next to a church, the priest calls me and he says, my parishioners can't even get a parking spot. So we hope that Lansing responds and they take this law and they put some controls in place. And personally, I hope communities in Eaton County choose to have none, but if they do choose to have them, they're going to be able to control it. A few other things, we've changed the Michigan Commission on Law Enforcement Standards, known as MCOLS. The governor has directed, within 120 days, they come up with improvements. He wants communities and police to build trust. We all know that every time there's a shooting across the nation, there's a loss of trust. And so it's going to be more mandated training. Another thing that we did pass, that police officers will be licensed. They won't simply have a certificate. So we hope to weed out the bad ones and keep the good ones. Thanks, that's all I have.
As everybody knows, the Battle Creek Missile Defense issue is a big issue for Michigan. It's a lot of jobs. It'll attract a lot of defense contractors in Michigan. And the opportunities through an Eaton SME are fantastic. And I encourage, especially the business community, to build a relationship with the EDC. What the governor's done through Pure Michigan and working with the Protect and Grow community is really tremendous opportunity for businesses in Michigan. So if you have folks that are looking at missile defense, it's Battle Creek. If we get the missile defense system in Battle Creek, which looks really good, other than there's other states, New York, and I'm trying to think, Wisconsin or that are in the mix on this. To put it here in Michigan, we don't have to disrupt any wetlands or any endangered species lands, where the other two states actually have agriculture, or I should say environmental issues that they have to take care of. So it looks really good. I think that's a huge shot here in Michigan if we're able to get that. We did a delegation letter over the summer. The entire Michigan delegation sent to the DOD a letter in support of putting that in Battle Creek. On our work tour, like I said, we talked to a lot of businesses, and there was one.
Chris Thalen, Consumers Energy.
Mark Dickens, Greater Lansing Association Realtors.
Jeremy, what are you, County Commissioner?
Kevin Fletcher, Delta Township Supervisor.
Doug Lloyd, Eaton County Crossing.
Eric Hansen, Edward Jones, and the Kiwanis Club, Delta Township.
Angela Trader, Crown Plaza. Susan Wright, Waverly Community Schools.
Good morning, Ed Reed, Economic Development Coordinator for Delta Township.
Sue Patterman, Delta CDA Committee.
Larry Lovell with Delta EDC.
John Gardner with Comcast.
You just, oh, okay.
Been here all the time.
Right?